Today we're going to be talking about what is a 1031 exchange, how it works, some important things to know before you get started in a 1031 exchange, why it's important for investors to know, and if you stick around towards the end, I'm going to give you some insight on how you could help build generational wealth and get your kids and your grandkids tax-free wealth. You're going to want to check it out. What is a 1031 exchange? Well, essentially, a 1031 exchange is the IRS giving you the ability to take an investment property that you have, sell it, take all the funds from that sale, and roll it into purchasing another investment property and deferring all of your capital gains tax. Now, there's kind of a lot that went into that, and there's a lot of terms that you may or may not know, so I kind of want to go through each individual one. Capital gains taxes are essentially the difference or the profit between what the IRS values a property at versus what you sell it for. So for example, let's say you bought a property for $200,000 and you owned it for a number of years, and over the years you depreciated the property. That's that kind of tax benefit that you get from owning real estate that people talk about a lot. So you depreciate the property over the years. So you've depreciated it $50,000. So you had a $200,000 property, you depreciated it $50,000, so now its value is $150,000. But over those years, it appreciated in value, it went up in value, and now it's worth $300,000. So the capital gain would be that $150,000 difference between 300 and 150. It's that gain in the middle there. Now the next thing you need to know is that the IRS says it has to be like kind. But that doesn't mean exactly what most people think it means. See, like kind does not mean single family residence for a single family residence or a duplex for a duplex. Like kind in this case means property held for investment versus another property held for investment purposes. So for example, you could have bought a vacant lot that you were holding as an investment, sell it, and then exchange into an apartment complex. That's no problem. What you can't do is take a property like your primary residence and sell it and buy an investment property. Well, you can't 1031 exchange your primary residence. And then in reverse of that, you can't take an investment property that you have a lot of equity and sell it and 1031 exchange into a house you're buying for your primary residence. It has to be investment property for investment property. And the last part that we need to talk about is the word deferred, because you're deferring your capital gains tax. This doesn't mean eliminate, it doesn't mean get rid of, it means defer, which means saving for a later date. So let's say you buy a property, you 1031 exchange into another property, and then at that time you end up selling that property. Well, then you would owe all the capital gains tax at that time. How does a 1031 exchange actually work? Well, there's a few rules that you're going to want to know about. The property that you're buying has to be equal to or greater than the value of the property that you're selling. So let's say you have a $500,000 property that you just sold. You're going to want to 1031 exchange that into a property that's worth $500,000 or more. So $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, whatever. It just has to be more than. You can't sell a $500,000 and buy a $400,000 with it. The next thing that you're going to need to know is that you have to reinvest all of the cash from the sale. So let's say you sold a $500,000 property that was free and clear. You have to reinvest all $500,000 of cash into the next property or properties. If you have any cash left that you end up putting in your pocket, that's going to be what the IRS calls boot, and it's subject to your capital gains tax. So very important to note, you do need to get rid of all the cash in order to have a 100% successful 1031 exchange. Some important timelines to note is going to be that you have a 45-day limit from the day that you sell your property to identify potential replacement properties. Now there's a few different rules here, but generally you could pick 3 properties and you have to identify the properties that you're going to close on. And after that 45-day, you can't change that. You have to close on that property or one of those properties. So that's the 45-day rule. The next rule is the 180-day rule, which is you have 180 days from the day that you sold the property again, not after the 45 days. This is all from the date of sale. You have 180 days to actually close on the next property. Now you could close the next day, but you have a limit of 180 days. Now, if you exceed either of those two things, either one, you don't have any replacement property identified after 45 days, it's a failed exchange. And if you didn't close on the property by 180 days, you also have a failed exchange, meaning you have to pay taxes on the gain that you had on the first property. Now at this point you might be asking me, well, why is it so important to use the 1031 exchange if you're still going to owe the money later on, maybe when you sell the next property or the property after that? Well, it's a great question, and it really has to deal with how you're able to grow that money. So for example, let's say you sell a property and you had $100,000 of gain, and we're just going to pretend that the cash you have in the sale or from the sale is your gain. So you have $100,000. Now with the 1031 exchange, you could use all $100,000, which could be buying a $500,000 property with just a $100,000 sale, versus if you had to pay anywhere from 15 to, if you live here in California, you have to pay your state income tax as well. You could be at 40% in capital gains tax if you're at the highest income bracket. So that $100,000 could quickly become $80,000 or even $60,000. And if you only have $60,000, well, now you're only talking about a property that might be $240,000 versus a $500,000 property. That's a huge difference on the next property you're able to get and how quickly you can really amass your wealth. Using the 1031 exchange is really about being able to build as big of a portfolio as you really want using 1 or 2 properties that you're able to buy at the very beginning of your real estate journey. How to use the 1031 exchange strategy to get your kids and your grandkids tax-free wealth. Unfortunately, in order to use this strategy all the way to the end, you will have to die. But hopefully that's many, many years from now. So how does it work? Okay, let's say you defer that gain and you keep selling that property, buying a property 3 times bigger, and you keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger every time you do your 1031 exchange. And in this example, when you die, your heirs inherit the property and get a stepped up basis. So what does that mean? Let's say you had a $10 million real estate portfolio. You really grew it nice and big, and you depreciated 100% of it. So if you sold all 10 million, you'd be subject to tax on a full $10 million real estate portfolio. But then you pass away and your family inherits the property. Well, the IRS is going to give all those properties a stepped up basis, meaning the properties are now going to be valued at what they were worth upon the date of your death. So in this $10 million real estate portfolio example, the property, instead of being worth 0 and being subject to all the capital gains tax, now it'll be worth $10 million in the eyes of the IRS, and your family could sell all $10 million and not pay any capital gains tax. All of that deferred tax that you took over the years is going to be stepped up in basis, and all of that will be wiped away. So it's a great way to build wealth generationally. So I hope you really like that. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Comment down below if you have any questions. Maybe I didn't cover something all the way, or you were confused about a part of this topic. I'd be more than happy to answer that for you. Maybe I'll even make a follow-up video for you.